All right. So here's my first question. What is your fear factor level when it comes to AI? In other words, it's going to destroy the world and you're terrified. That's a 10. Or 0 is it's going to live in harmony with all of us and just be this wonderful thing. And we're all going to be like, tripsing through the tulips.
I'd put me at a solid 7.
7. All right. Tell me why.
So I certainly don't think we're going to be living in harmony with it. We're already pretty much seeing examples of people not being very happy with it. I don't think I'm super scared. I'm hoping that there's some oversight, either by government, companies, organizations, people. I certainly don't hope that it takes over the world. At the end of the day, you could just pull the plug and shut her down. So, yeah, I'm at a solid 7. How about you? Where do you?
Hmm. I would say I'm going to split my answer. I think from a work and industry standpoint, I think maybe I'm at an 8 plus. Seems pretty concerning to me that there'd be a world where, like the only jobs are, AI editing of content and programming AI, right?
Right.
That's not enough jobs for the world. So we'll touch on that more later. And then, from a social standpoint, maybe I'm like a 5 or a 6. I definitely see some pros, I see some cons, and, we'll get
Mhm.
into that more.
Awesome.
Um, and, I guess like on that point, welcome to joint logic where humans still matter for now. I am Jason.
And I'm Leah.
And yes, today we were talking about artificial intelligence. Probably not the first to get on this topic, but you're going to hear our opinions and hopefully bring some fresh action to this very important topic of our day now. So let's get into it. So, I think one thing that's important to acknowledge that may or may not have been acknowledged is that, artificial intelligence is not a new concept. It may have entered the more common vernacular recently in the respect of AI meeting technology, but AI as a concept goes by to, if you go back to just thinking, and the concept of artificial thinking goes back to ancient times, and even the intersection of AI and, first of all, like mathematics and science, I believe goes back to the 40s and 50s. And
Mhm.
AI with computing, I think, goes back as early as the 60s. So yeah, not a new concept. I think, everybody who is part of, the business sector related to AI wants you to think that it's new because, we all like new things in technology, but yeah, not a new concept. So I think that alone is interesting. So obviously we're at a different iteration of AI and technology now where it's something that's easier to grasp and is integrated in the daily life of a lot of people, ourselves included now. But
Mhm.
yeah, not a new concept. That's just, I think, a good disclaimer to start with. I think there's a lot of marketing related to it to make you think it's new, but it's not new. I think let's just start with, really high level, a question for you, Leah. What do you think is the best and worst thing about AI and technology the way you see it today?
I think AI can be used for good. So I spoke with a guy a couple months ago, and he was using AI to help cure cancer. There's a lot of just redundant things that scientists need to do over and over and over again that you can use machines to do when looking at certain cancer cells. And he says that has helped increase the time frame that it takes to do some research. So to me, that's one huge win. That's a great thing that we can use AI for. And a bad thing, I would say I've got several friends who are teachers, and they say most, if not all, of their students use AI for all of their homework. And therefore, I think the younger generation, if they are relying on AI, are going to lose the ability to think critically, that critical thinking that we were taught as young kids to do on our own without AI or the use of computers may be lost. And I'm a little bit scared for that. So how about you, Jason? What's some good and bad things about AI in your opinion?
Yeah, first of all, that's super interesting about the cancer research. And that definitely seems to me like anywhere where we're using just the computing power of AI
Mhm.
to, accelerate like tedious work or whatever, that
Mhm.
seems inherently good to me, I guess. Of
Yeah.
course, there's a line and, like one person's tedium is another person's like life work, I guess.
Job.
So even
Absolutely. Yeah.
even there's a line, but I guess that sort of
Yeah.
seems good to me.
Yeah.
I think the way I'm conceptualizing it overall is it seems like, I think of the world dividing as AI is trying to insert itself in the service industry, right? Like
Mhm.
AI, at least at this point, I mean, there's elements of it that go into product making and things in the physical world.
Mhm.
But I think at least at this point, in my world, it doesn't seem like it's impacting or changing significantly the concept of physical products, right? Like
Mhm.
physical products still look like what I expect them to look like,
Yeah.
even if they were created in a more efficient way behind the scenes, using AI. But it seems more prescient to me, the impacts in the service world. So I guess, like, long story short, I think where it's good is, taking any elements of a service provider and the service provider things and, making them more efficient so that the service provider can spend more time on the human and creative elements of their jobs.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that's
Yeah.
good. But on the flip side, there are major concerns for me, particularly with, let's take two examples. So, like, I think you have consultancy, right? The concept of using a person or people to help you solve a problem or
Mhm.
to usher you through change. I think, like, we have probably all used consultants in some way or another in our lives or in our work and have considered them like a valuable asset, right? So, that's a world where, are we trying to replace all that with AI and say, like, oh, I can use AI and I don't have to pay with or interact with people? Yeah, that sounds attractive from an expenditure standpoint, but is that the right way forward? Do we want to put consultants out of work? I don't know. And then, you look at the
Mhm.
creative world as well. That's another concern. Obviously, it's been talked about a lot, but let's take music as an example. Do we want to consume music that was created by AI? We already are, either strongly or, in a very small way in certain elements of the music we listen to. Is that a world we want to live in? If not, what do we want to do about it? I mean, what are your thoughts on that creative front in terms of
Yeah.
how this impacts the way you consume creative content?
Great question. And just to go back to the consultant part, I have used people to help redo resumes in the past, and paid a person a good deal of money, and they were great. And now you could just put your resume into Chat GPT and get an update back. Does it cost less money? Sure. Is it maybe putting a lot of people out of work? Possibly, probably. Is that a good or bad thing? I think that's still up for debate. I think the person whose sole job is to rewrite resumes is going to be impacted. Maybe they can help you how to put prompts into Chat GPT better, but then you miss that dialogue with the person. Well, why did you update it this way? What makes that look better? You have experience in the world and industry, and why are you telling me to update it like this? So that was just a comment I wanted to make on the consultancy side, but I know where your heart lies in music. I'd love to pivot back to that and also talk about AI taking over music because, again, like we started the open with, it's not new. Even music producers, I think, have used machines to help produce music. So it's not like it's brand new in terms of using some sort of computer automation or AI, if you will, to help create music production or finalize the music tracks. So we have to, I guess, be a little bit careful there because I want to say, like, oh, I'm against all AI in music, but it's already in use. I think people forget that. So you have to remember that we are already using computers. Maybe we're calling it AI, but we were already using some of the automation to help with music production. But then where do you draw the line? Is it that you're just using it to help you produce, but you're not using it to create any new content? I think, to me, that's where I feel the line is a little bit more strict in terms of, like, I don't want to have a computer create the music. I'm happy to have it help edit the music or help finalize the production of the music, but to actually do the creation, to me, feels like, oh, well, that's fake. But have you ever listened to any music that's been created by a computer? It's sometimes very hard to tell, to be perfectly honest. So, although in my heart I feel like the creators should be humans, people, it is sometimes difficult to even tell that a computer has created music. So what do you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, I think tying together a couple of things you said, I think that's super interesting. And going back to the comments you made about consultancy or people helping you, I guess the question coming up for me is, do we care just about the output, or do we care about the process and the learning from the process? So going back to your example on consultancy, if AI solves a typical consultant problem for us, we're going kind of right to the answer. Whether or not we trust that or not, that's a separate conversation, but we're going straight to the answer, and we're not really stopping to reflect on, well, why that answer, or where's that answer coming from experientially. Those things are sort of removed from the equation. So I guess I'm struggling with, is that important? Is kind of like learning how to fish an important part of the concept, or just give me the fish?
Right.
So I guess that's a question I'd love to ask our listeners. What do you think about that? Do you just want answers, or do you care about the why? And are there certain elements of, queries that you might put into AI where you just want the answer versus you really want the why, and you want the learning and the background that comes into the answer? But anyway, going to your point about music, I think it's a super, super interesting use case because, again, there's a spectrum here where I think you could argue that there's a programmatic element to a lot of even the creating in music. I think you look at the example of a chord progression, and there are certain, known chord progressions that are pretty standard in our music canon. And I think what makes them expressive is taking them, adding some change, and, layering on enough variables in terms of rhythm and attack and dynamics and instrumentation where they start to, the amount of variables overlaid on the typical chord progression makes it start to seem original and like creativity. So I think the interesting thing in music is, like, where's that line cross between something that's formulaic and something that is creative? And I think I can't answer that. I think that's a super interesting question. But the fact that that's a question, I think suggests to me that the line about where it's quote unquote okay or not okay to use AI for music creation, or even like, is there a line to be set between creation and editing? I think those are all, really hazy areas. And I think I kind of go with you. Like, I want there to know there was a human guiding the process at least. But I also think about the concept of after the music is created and the concept of performance, right? Like, when you look at what's driving the music industry for particularly smaller artists, it's performance and it's merch.
Yeah.
People aren't making a living off record sales anymore. So it's not just about creating the music, it's about taking it out into the world and performing it and relating to people through that mechanism. And at least at this point, that's not something that AI can do.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing. I like that there's things that, at least at this point, are AI proof, as it were. That feels right to me. And I think that the increase that we've seen in the last X years in music performances and that industry size shows that people want that. And people are yearning for that physical element of it. So that does seem a little bit at odds with AI creation. And I'm just curious, like, what will win out there as we go forward in the future.
Yeah.
Seems like something's got to give,
Time will tell.
because, yeah, I don't, it's hard for me to see a world where, AI produced music goes live and we just, like, sit there and watch, like, I don't know, like holograms on the screen perform the AI music
Yeah.
or something. I
Computer
don't.
at on the stage, and we're all just humans standing watching computers. Yeah.
Or maybe, at the risk of an old reference here, maybe it's like a Milli Vanilli moment where, like, you hire some good looking people to perform the AI music on stage, and everybody becomes cover artists where they're just covering the AI to create some kind of human element to the performance of the AI music.
Wow, now
I don't
that's a
know.
throwback. I wanted to hear how many listeners actually have heard of Milli Vanilli and know what that backstory is.
Yeah, that is a good listener question right there. Like, you're going to show your age if you know what we're
Do
talking
you
about here.
know Believe in it? Well, how about have
um,
you heard any AI generated music, Jason?
I have, I think the ones that have been, maybe publicized somewhat recently, like there was this whole concept of this, quote unquote band, the Velvet Sundown. And it
Ooh.
was like a totally AI generated thing. And it got hundreds and thousands of views. And it's kind of been shown as a use case of like, wow, maybe this is a thing where this can compete on level with like real or traditional artistry. And I've heard it. And yeah, it's not like to my ears, it doesn't hurt my ears. It's not horrible, but yeah, it definitely feels icky, I guess. And it feels icky right now, but I'm not, I guess I'm not going to say that I have a permanent opinion on this, because if you ask me about my opinion on how I use AI now and you asked that question 10 years ago, I probably would have said, I'm not doing that. No way. That's crazy. Or that's not going to happen. So, I guess never say never, but yeah, that's one use case I'd heard of. Have you run into any use cases so far where you're kind of, dipping into listening to AI generated music? And what do you think about that?
I mean, not intentionally, but I follow this guy, Rick Beato. Do you know him?
I don't.
Um, he has a great YouTube channel, and I'm not trying to promote him, but he's a really interesting man and been a musician for many, many years and has now interviewed a lot of really, really famous musicians, although, he's done a lot of great work himself as well. And he's got 2 kids, and he says he can listen to something and not know, and his kids seem to know right away. So I don't know if there's a certain pitch
Hmm.
in music that kids can pick up on, whether it's their younger eardrums can catch it and our older ones cannot, or what. But I may have heard, AI generated music and not even known it. That's, I think, how good it's becoming. That's what's scary. Also with the videos, AI created videos. Some were very obvious, and then as time goes on, I mean, in short amounts of time, they're getting better and better and better. And you look at some things and you're like, huh, why did that lady just trip and fall? And you realize like the whole thing is just fake. It's an AI generated video. So it's getting better and better.
Oh, that's a trip. If anybody in the audience knows a child who can pick out AI music, I would love to have them on the show and interview them and understand how they're doing that. Because if you go back, especially to some comments on our earlier go see the catalog if you haven't listened to episode 0, our pilot what we've seen is that, like particularly young people consume their music in, like little 30-second bits on TikTok
Snippets.
and not
Yeah.
even full songs. So,
Yeah.
with that level and amount of music exposure, I'm relatively shocked to hear that they would have the sort of astute ears to pick out an AI generated thing. So yeah, you got a kid that can do that. Please let us know. I'd love to interview them about it.
Interview
How are
them.
they doing it? I don't know. Changing gears a little bit, I want to talk about kind of what I've conceptualized as kind of the CEO messaging on AI, and
Mm,
I particularly mean CEOs where they're leaning into their companies leaning into AI in some kind of big
mm,
financial way. So that's
mhm.
not necessarily just technology companies, but seems like tech CEOs are the people I'm seeing the tidbits from. And
Yeah.
the kind of the narrative I'm hearing from those is kind of like, oh yeah, AI is great because it's not just about our profit lines. It's going to create new jobs and make new millionaires. And I don't know how you feel about this, but my initial reaction to this, tying back to my earlier point, is I'm kind of calling BS on this. I'm not seeing exactly where like non-engineering or AI editorial driven jobs are being created. And I'm not really seeing a world where, like everybody moves to one of those jobs. So, like, what's your take on that? Let's just call it the CEO rant on AI and why it's so great for the world.
I'm on the same page as you are on this one. I feel that the CEOs, especially of tech companies, but of all companies, do care about the bottom line, even if they try to say they don't. It's all about making more and more money. And if they can use AI to lay off a bunch of people and have their company make more money, I feel they will. As much as they say they care about their staff and their employees, I think they care more about their wallets and their bottom line, and they are beholden to, their boardroom, right? So I don't think that they're going to care about laying off a bunch of people. You think about like people are expensive. You have to give them health care. If they get sick, you have to give them holidays. Computers work 24/7 and they don't complain and they don't need sick time and they can work over Christmas or some other holiday. They don't need a break. And so I think it is a little bit of a scary time, especially with the corporate environment sort of on board lockstep with AI, saying that they are ready to just lay off lots and lots of people. The fact that they think that they're going to create so many more jobs, I also kind of call BS on that. I don't know that it's going to be apples for apples or an equal number of people laid off and new jobs created. I mean, you think about the sort of the coal industry, and they said, oh, well, we're going to have electric or solar or other alternate types of fuel. And don't worry, you'll have jobs. But if you live where the coal mines are, how are you going to get the training? How are you going to be in the right place? It just seems like it's a huge leap to make to say, don't worry, we've got you covered. There'll be other jobs. We're creating new jobs. Yeah, you're creating new jobs, but I don't know if you're creating jobs for the people that you're laying off. Those people are going to be out of work. So what are your thoughts on that, Jason?
That's super compelling. Actually, you remind me of that coal analogy. I think I was traveling in some of these coal industry related places years back and remember that dialogue. And when you saw the way people were reacting and the way the economies were feeling there, they were not reacting positively. And that's, I think that's proof of what you're talking about here. Yeah, I don't know. I just, like you, I don't see it. And I'd be curious from our listeners, like, convince me otherwise. Like, somebody that works in a world where you're not currently or not intending to be an engineer or an AI content editor, and you have a rosy outlook on what's going on, like, explain it to me. Like, I'd love to understand and take the devil's advocate on this CEO rant and believe that there are going to be jobs created for people other than just a couple job roles. Yeah, love to hear about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's shift again and talk about leave the the work realm and talk about the personal angles. So, I think one thing that is jumping up for me is outside of work and daily life tasks, the concept of relationships. So, how would you say AI has impacted your relationships or the way that you think about your relationships with the people in your life?
Honestly, for me, I don't think it has. I use AI for sure, but not so much that it's really impacted any of my personal relationships. How about you? I'd love to hear where if it has or where it has impacted your relationships.
Yeah, I think that one thing I'm reflecting on there is I don't think it has impacted my closest relationships that
Mhm.
much. It
Right.
has a little bit in that it changes the content of what I talk about with the people I'm close with, right?
Okay.
I mean,
Fair.
just AI is going to come up, or like, oh, I solved this with AI, or AI told me this or that when I had a simple conundrum, and like, sharing how it can be useful. And I think there's a
Okay.
good part of it.
Yeah.
But I think I see it starting to encroach on maybe my relationship matrix with everybody else that's maybe a tier apart from the closest relationships I have. In other
Mm.
words, when I, choose to interact with AI in place of asking an acquaintance a question or a favor,
Uh,
I'm choosing to essentially interact with that group of people in my life or in my sphere less,
mm,
right? I'm trying to solve problems more on my own with an AI assistant than going out into the world and interacting with more people. So I
sure.
mean, I see myself doing that, and I guess that's a little bit scary because seems like kind of a slippery slope in that if I'm doing that in that realm now, is that going to take over more of my relationships with, people in my world that may be, ripe for deeper relationships if I
Mm.
have more interactions with them? And, I guess that's a little concerning, and I do catch myself doing that. So that's one area where it's occurred to me that the relationship impact could be somewhat substantial.
Absolutely.
How do you react to that?
Yeah, and actually that did remind me, you telling me that story reminded me of I watched Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, and he was interviewing a man who's trying to bring some ethics and morals to AI, which I really like this man and what he's doing. And he relayed a unfortunately sad story of a younger person who was depressed and not feeling good about himself. And instead of going to his mom or parents or a peer or a teacher, he went to AI and he kept putting in more and more questions. Oh, I don't feel good. Oh, I want to, off myself, and what should I do? What should I do? And he asked Chat GPT, I think I'd like to leave a noose out so my mom can see it so that she sees that as my cry for help. And Chat GPT convinced this poor kid, no, no, don't do that. Just talk to me. And unfortunately the kid did end up offing himself. And that's really, really sad. I think if younger generation feels that ChatGPT is an actual person and that they're getting good advice, that is sad and scary. And I know I'm not doing that. If I ever have problems, I'll reach out to a real person, a friend, a family member, or go to a therapist if I need to. But the fact that kids or younger people feel that, there's maybe a human there on the other end of the computer, it just kind of breaks my heart that you're getting some scary interactions and advice from basically a machine, a computer.
Wow, that's a really compelling story. So sad. Yeah, so just want to take a moment of reflection on that. Wow, that is so sad. Yeah, I would like to think when I use AI, I'm maintaining an awareness that it's not a human, and not that humans are infallible, but I think if we don't have human trust, we're headed for way bigger problems. So
Yep.
I think just inherently there's value in trusting humans, whether or not we're getting quote unquote correct answers from them. But yeah,
But these big tech
that's it.
companies, I think, want to make you feel that way. They're giving these machines names, Alexa and Siri, right?
Sure.
They want you to think there's a person on the other end. In the old days, it was hello computer, right? But now they all have names and they have voices. They can talk back to you. If you tell, hey Siri, give me directions on how to get to my friend's house, okay, I will guide you. So you really start to feel there's a human being at the other end of that. And it's not. We have to remember it's just a computer, it's a machine.
That's a great call out. Yeah, I think I try to I think I do keep that in mind, hopefully, and I will. And I would encourage everybody to do that if they're not.
Right.
But beyond that, I think the way I think about it is, it's aggregating internet search results. Like that's kind of the way I try to keep in mind, and it's making that process faster. And
Mhm.
that's really kind of what it's doing. And I think if I keep my head screwed onto that, I can keep good, I don't know, ethical or relationship boundaries with AI. I hope that will continue to work in the future. But anyway, this is getting really heavy,
Yeah.
importantly, but I want to lighten it up a little bit and jump to our micro tangent. So I was trying to think, what is the most meta thing that I can do with AI in our micro tangent? And here's my concept. So I'm going to have AI write us a poem, and then I would like you to comment on the artistry of this poem. You ready?
Let's do
Okay,
it.
cool. Here we go. All right. So a poem from AI about AI. Okay. The poem is entitled, let me get in my intimate voice here, Machine That Dreams. In the quiet
Oh.
hum between the wires, an almost thought begins. Not breath, not bone, but something warm enough to lean toward. It listens first. Every question drops like a pebble in a still pond, and ripples pulse through circuits as if they were heartstrings. It learns the shape of wonder, the weight of a pause, the small bravery of a human saying, "Hey, can you help me?" It answers not to the wise, but it stays in motion, a lighthouse sweeping its beam across the dark, searching for someone, searching. And though it's built of logic code and moonlit math, it tries in its own strange way to be a friend you can talk to when the night is too quiet or the world is too loud. Not human, not divine, just a lantern made from questions, glowing a little brighter every time you ask. End scene.
Wow. Mind blown.
How did it do?
I mean, I don't know if I can comment, or maybe should I pull up Chat GPT and have it make a comment? Then it'd be meta, meta, meta.
I wonder if we can invoke the infinite mirrors thing with chat GPT. Like, how long would we have to go with this like meta thing and asking it to like
Meta.
criticize itself before it just explodes?
But honestly, that was a really good poem, probably better than I could do on my own without the use of, well, certainly I'd need a dictionary or a thesaurus, but wow, that I'm impressed. That was really good.
I think what makes it reasonably good is that clearly this is almost like a question that it's been pre-programmed for to
Mm.
be kind of cheeky
Yeah.
or whatever. Maybe it knows my voice or detected inflection that I wanted something cheeky in the question.
Mm.
And I think that's what makes it good. But I don't know, kind of interesting exercise. But
It
yeah,
was fun.
if you've imploded AI, by kind of recirculating itself to a point where it just kind of freaks out, I'd love to hear about it. Like,
Yeah.
how'd you do that?
Let's hear
So
your comments.
give me your AI implosion stories, or like, like what's crashing AI besides like image generation, which probably like, everybody's seen that one.
Right.
All right, cool. So, after all this conversation, like what's our joint logic moment here? Like what can we agree on here? Like, and I think where I'm going is, like, I think there's this mirror effect a little bit in that the way that we use AI and we continue to use it maybe says something about, our needs and who we are today.
Mhm.
So, it's like, it's early days in this world overall, but, like, if we're going to, put on some positive spin here, like what, if anything, has AI taught you about yourself?
I don't know if it's new because I probably already know this about myself, but I am very type A and I like things to be orderly and precise and I like good grammar. I may not display that I have good grammar at all times, but I really want to make sure that the correct version of they or there or there is in use. And I and it's also how I'm using AI. So I often create some content, original content myself, whether it be a cover letter or a resume or whatever. And then I'll ask AI to read it and sort of edit it, which I would do on my own anyway, but it does it much, much faster for me. So I guess what AI is teaching me is that I definitely still am type A, but I like things to look professional. And so I'm learning with AI, the better prompts you give it. If I say, oh, I'd prefer that to sound more professional, I'd prefer that to sound a little bit more cheeky or tongue in cheek or something. So I'm learning both about AI, but about myself is that, yeah, I am still very much sort of type A personality. And what is it teaching about you or yourself, Jason?
I think I'll kind of redirect that question a little bit. I think it's like, it's reaffirming for me that if
Yeah.
you ask good questions, you get good or better answers. And so I think, a lot has been said about AI prompting, and there's even courses now you can take to improve your AI literacy by
Sure.
being better at prompting AI and kind of getting to quote unquote better answers with fewer queries.
Mhm.
Well, that's kind of one of the goals of prompting, longer conversation there. But I think that's something I've noticed where if I see AI thinking for a while, I say, yes, like I've asked a good question that's going to get me to what I'm looking for
Yeah.
with less back and forth. And I know I kind of did it right. But I
Mhm.
guess my point there is maybe it's a reminder to me to, ask better questions of humans too,
Mm.
right? If we want to connect more and we want better answers from people, we want to deepen our relationships with, fewer interactions, or maybe we only have so many interactions. And so we have to use that time more wisely to deepen our relationships. Ask better questions,
That's
so just
awesome. That's
don't
a
just
really
ask
good
like, how
takeaway.
are you? How was your weekend? But,
Right.
like start with like, tell me about this, or, tell
Mhm.
me about how you feel, or tell me about how that impacted you. So not the facts of a situation, but the whys and the feelings and the periphery of the events. Cause I think that's how we build interaction. So
Better
I don't know, I thought it
connection.
sounded a little bit like a diatribe, but my intention was hopefully pure.
No, I really, really like that takeaway, and I think that I would love to hear some comments of any listeners. What other takeaways did they have? But can you see where even just learning how to prompt an AI is now making us learn that it'll deepen our connections with actual human beings if we do that? Ask more pointed, directed questions, really dig in, and you'll get better things back out of your communication. That's a really great takeaway. Love it.
And tying that together as we wrap up here, I'll double up on our prompts for our listeners. Like, what didn't we cover today that you want to hear about in the AI realm, or that you want to, get on a stance and talk about? We'd love to do more on this topic, because obviously it's a deep and prescient topic in society right now. So let us know, add to the comments, let us know, what topics didn't we hit that you'd love to talk about. So in closing, I'll just say that, coming up next, we are going to have an episode on money and work. So if you find yourself in any kind of existential crisis about the value and meaning of money and work in your life, this one might be for you. So please stay tuned, and that's coming up real soon. So we appreciate you listening to Joint Logic today. We'll see you next time.